welcome once again to our harvest celebration. I'm sure many of you can remember different occasions when you've come to church for harvest and bring in vegetables and fruit, and maybe there was a display of bread at the front of church. But this year is very different. I know many churches and our celebration of harvest is not necessarily what it used to be. But added to that, this year we've got the various difficulties associated with the restrictions where we're not able to meet in church. And we're coming towards the end of October, so this is the last opportunity for us to celebrate harvest. By the way, my experience of harvest in different farming communities is that it can be celebrated not just in October, but at all sorts of times in a year. I remember the earliest harvest church service we had was in May in Carmarthenshire, which was just after lambing season, where the farmers would come and celebrate harvest then, because they had finished the lambing and they had a small window of opportunity to enjoy. Before then they had to go on and manage the hay and everything through the summer. The latest I've celebrated harvest was in Pembrokeshire, which was the middle of November, or towards the end of November even. It was the week before we celebrated Advent, and it was the last occasion, the opportunity they had to have a harvest dinner, so we held the harvest service then in the very dark nights of November. So harvest for many different communities is held at different times of the year and of course has different traditions. Some places there's a big cricket match containing everyone in the community with no boundary, and I can remember as a young boy running all the way down to the bottom of the hill to try and catch the ball, but the ball was moving faster than I, and it was only the stream at the bottom that was able to stop the ball. Other harvest traditions which have been told to me where people have brought along all that they had left over in their pantry and added to a big pot, and it was stirred together to make some strange concoction, a pie of some sorts. These traditions have largely fallen by the wayside. In Italy, fish have been left on doorsteps, so you wake up in the morning and you find a fish wrapped in paper on your doorstep to welcome the harvest day. Well, these traditions may have fallen aside, but it's still an important thing to celebrate. It's still important to remember that many different people are involved in the production of food which we celebrate and which we enjoy throughout the year. Not only the farmers who are going to be having a difficult time of it at this time, the migrant workers who work the fields in many parts of our country, but those in delivery and in shops and supermarkets who are part of the food production. Maybe some of you grow your own vegetables in allotments or in the garden. God's creation is there to provide us with a rich bounty if only we care for his planet and we look after it in the way that he designed. And of course there will be other times when we'll talk further about the care that we need to give to creation at this time and to God's ecology. And also there's a couple of projects we have in mind. Garden projects associated with our church grounds, which we will want to launch if we're able to come out of lockdown over this winter. But more about that at another time. What I did want to highlight is one painting by an English artist called George Clausen. Now George Clausen, he died in the middle of the Second World War, so lived at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s. He was knighted, he was a war artist during the First World War, but what particularly drew his attention was farming life in Berkshire and the home counties. He could see that way of life was disappearing, and his paintings capture that period when Many people were still working on the land, but also they were being replaced by machinery. And it was a very hard life. They were increasingly having to work for less and less money to compete with that machinery. And the painting which I've highlighted is one where this couple have obviously stopped for the lunch break, and you see maybe the husband or maybe the boyfriend, we don't really know, is fallen asleep in the field with his hat over his face, trying to catch some rest, while the woman sits upright and you can see the exhaustion in her face. She's not asleep during lunchtime. She has the duty of keeping an eye on the pot. Maybe they've got some fish bubbling away they've caught. Maybe they brought something with them. Maybe it's a light stew. One can understand the exhaustion, and we have to remember that the man there lying might have been up since early hours, since daybreak, cutting the corn, and you can see the hay in the distance of the painting, the hay stalks, and he would have been cutting it by hand with a big scythe. And to cut hay for 5 hours is an exhausting business on the back and the arms. And the woman would have been there gathering it in and tying it together. So both of them are taking this opportunity for a break before they go back to their hours of work in the afternoon, then to home and to start again the next day. It's a picture of two people separated in a way, but joined by their activity. The passage we've had from Matthew's Gospel today talks about the signs of the times. It talks about watching the fig tree, watching nature around you to see how the times are changing. And that maybe is something we don't do enough of. We are aware that our times are changing, not only the times which have changed during our own lifetime, and indeed they seem to speed up as each year passes and each bit of technology comes to bear upon our lives. But the way we live our lives, the way we interact, the way we come to church, the way we interact with our church, the times we're living through in terms of the coronavirus, all these things are making an impact on us, and we sometimes are unaware of it. We don't notice. And what Jesus calls us to is to be aware of our own time, to look for the signs. Maybe we can make adjustments. Maybe we can make adjustments which will be better for others so that they can bear the change of times. Maybe we can gather together in church in different activities and help to offset some of the difficult changes which are happening in society, where social services are not coping with those changes, where the environment is not coping with the change. Maybe there's things, projects, by looking at the signs of the times, we all can gather together and work so that those changes are not as difficult as they appear to be for many. Well, I then finally wonder how you, in happier times, have spent your harvests, what you have done. Maybe you have, in the past, had a connection with the land or food production. Maybe it's been the traditions of chapel and church. Maybe it's been the harvest service, singing those favourite hymns, which a couple have featured in this service. Maybe we have stories to share when we come together again of how we have done different things at different harvest times. And as you have seen in some of these photos, it might surprise you what Amy and I and the family have done over the years. And maybe we'll have opportunities to have once again a harvest celebration in church where we share a big, large harvest dinner. Maybe that's something we have as an aim for next year. But until then, let us remember all those and pray for all those who are involved in all the different forms of producing food, so that we are able each day to gather around a table and eat. We also, of course, at this harvest time, remember those who struggle to find food for their families. And we therefore commend all the different charities, the food banks within our community, which we all can contribute to, who go to supporting those families at this time. So therefore I'd ask you to hold all these people in your prayer as we step forward into the next season, keeping an eye on the sign of the times.